What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening to the market so far and what you should be watching for as time progresses. And also some very important updates about how the market's looking going into Friday. But before I break things down, all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. So anyways, let's break down what's happening to SPY and these different tickers. Right now, SPY got a pretty nice close. It just closed a few minutes ago, closing up 0.39%. It's very flat in the after hours. Tesla came down a bit. NEO was a bit down. The IWM was kind of flat, somewhat in the green. Apple was green, and then we saw some tickers kind of slow down, like Nvidia and Tesla, and even Microsoft was kind of flat. But most tickers ended up closing in very, very either flat or somewhat green, and a couple of them were kind of red that were associated with like the semiconductors and Nvidia. So we saw some red with mainly green throughout the markets. And the question is, how will the market move from here? Well, honestly, guys, when I was talking about Nvidia's earnings yesterday, I was worried about the risk of downside because of Nvidia and because of how SPY was looking. SPY was impacted by Nvidia during the after hours, but Nvidia ended up just holding up quite well. We got a quick sell off in the beginning, and then it got bought back up, and it was just trading kind of flat. Overall, it did close red, but it wasn't really enough to cause the whole market to sink. And once again, since that happens, right, we're just going to be reading the trend and seeing how this moves going forward. So I was also unavailable during the morning to warn you guys about the upside that was coming to SPY. The data that came out was quite decent, at least from the Michigan consumer sentiment part. This was decent. Everything else was aligning with expectations. Initial jobless claims was a bit lower than expected, but that didn't really shake the market. The market was fine because continuing jobless claims were as expected. Generally, this would cause the market to slow down, but this time around, it didn't really affect it that much. So the buyers are still defending, and the market's not done quite yet. But moving forward, I just want to mention that the market is still quite greedy. We're starting to see other indicators hitting extremes. So we're at greed right now on the fear and greed index. We're getting closer to extreme greed. On top of this, we're seeing extreme greed for market momentum. We also have the put and call options on extreme greed. And then we also have like other indicators that are quite neutral or also closer to like extreme greed. So it's very interesting to see. And in my opinion, I'm going to be watching this as time goes on. When it comes to other factors out there for Friday, I just want to note that we have close to 1 million puts expiring and only about 360,000 calls expiring. So the majority of positions are going to be puts. We're going to be watching to see if we get a final push in the markets or not. Now, what is my view of the market? Do I think the market's going to explode? The answer is not necessarily. I think that there's a clear sign that the market is seeing that resistance is getting tighter. So if you look at this on an intraday basis, let me just show you what I'm talking about. SPY basically, if you look at yesterday, SPY tried to push just a little bit. It was very flat yesterday, super, super flat. And you could see this resistance in this like 453 area was tight. We got another push today as soon as we opened hitting 456. So another push up, but we didn't break this. We didn't just push past 456.5, hit 457, 458. No, we hit the resistance, came down, then we just traded sideways for the entire day. The market was very flat, and we're just continuing to see this consolidation perpetuate. So this is very interesting. Going into Friday, I just want to call out Friday because we just have some PMI data coming out. During the FOMC minutes, the Fed announced that they're going to be looking at the PMI reports very closely. So that's quite important. So we'll be watching this for Friday to see what this looks like, and this could affect the markets 15 minutes after the market opens. So going into Thursday, which is tomorrow, there's going to be no trading. It's going to be Thanksgiving, and it's going to be a great day to be grateful and maybe spend some time away from the charts. So with that being said, let's talk about SPY and just a couple of these tickers. SPY has this rising wedge that is developing on the chart. You can see it's continuing to go higher and higher and higher, but resistance is getting tougher up here because when you go back on the chart, if we look at what happened back in July or at the very end of July, we ended up getting this rejection. So like right here, we had this rejection all the way up to this like 458 area, just under that. We also had like some tight resistance at 456.5, and within those ranges, at least moving forward. So with that being said, there's some tight resistance up here. It's getting tighter and tighter and tighter and harder for SPY to continue to break out. So in my opinion, I think that it is possible for it to go a bit higher, but you want to be very careful if you're going to just turn into like a mega bull because of this rising wedge. You want to be very, very careful. And if we get any sort of break below this trend line, we have to be watching 452. If we lose that support, that's when SPY could start sinking a bit. And I think the odds favor that over the next like 1.5 weeks. There's going to be somewhat of a pullback, but then I think there's going to be more upside for December, going into like the second half of December, if not the final 3 weeks. There's going to be more upside still coming. So that's kind of like what I'm anticipating. But I'm not going to turn super bearish. I'm not going to turn super bullish until I see the chart show me a sign of this breaking down. And thus far, there's no sign just yet. So the best thing to do is just be very patient. Part of why I'm talking about some kind of pullback is because on the 4-hour time frame, the bearish divergence is still developing on SPY. It's still developing. I mean, there's no sign of this breaking down yet. SPY goes higher and higher, and the RSI is continuing to decline, which is telling us that there's going to likely be a rejection in the future coming very, very soon. And if that's not like the case, right? If that ends up not being the case, for now, in order for this to like change, we need to see SPY break out. We need to see the RSI continue, but it's not really doing that. The RSI is continuing to weaken. So I think what's going to happen is, and this is what my prediction is, I think it could push a little bit higher. It could try to push very, very much close to like that 458 area, if not even like 460, just a little bit more. But I still think there's going to be some kind of pullback. We're due for the pullback. It's going to be coming. It may take a while to get it because this market is just insane and trying to squeeze as many shorts as possible. It may not start this week because of how many puts are expiring on Friday. It's going to depend on the news. But I think there might be a pullback coming starting within the next like 2 weeks. And then it's going to be very temporary. It's not going to be that massive. A small pullback just to cool off the indicators. Then we're going to get another rally for December. And I think that's what's most likely going to happen in my view for SPY. As far as Tesla goes, I just want to call out that Tesla is once again looking bullish overall. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure, and Tesla's trying to base right here. But we're going to be watching this daily time frame right here because Nvidia is affecting Tesla to some extent, even more than the overall market. Tesla has this unfilled gap technically all the way down to this like 224 area on the daily. We haven't technically filled it, and we're going to be watching 230. If we lose 230, we could come down to fill the gap and then bounce. But watch that support at the daily 200 EMA. This is looking a little weaker right now, especially when you look at the chart. We have a potential flag that's forming on it, and this could lead to some downside in the future. Now, maybe it doesn't start Friday. On Friday, we could see Tesla just try to continue to respect this, but going into like, I would say the next week that's coming, that's when things could change for the stock, just temporarily approaching the Cybertruck launch event. So we could see something like this where it kind of like uptrends a bit, comes down one more time for another liquidity grab. Then we might see some upside next week thanks to the Cybertruck event, at least temporarily. So I think it may make a move kind of like that. This also kind of looks like a possible head and shoulders that could be developing. I don't know if we're going to like uptrend a bit going into Friday, then just get like a rejection, trade a little bit sideways before pumping once again for the Cybertruck event. So I'm anticipating something like that to be happening. But for now, watch Tesla, continue to uptrend a little bit more. Let's see how this flag forms. Let's see if we get a rejection back down for a final drop for them to grab some liquidity. So that's going to be our next looking parallel structure, and that's going to be very important. So that's what I'm basically seeing for Tesla. I just wanted to call this out. So we might see something like this where it just goes, back and forth like this for some time. But then if we get this break to the downside, it could just like come back here and just grab liquidity and eventually make its way up approaching this Cybertruck event for a nice uptrend to start filling this imbalance. We could see something like this, but for now, just look at this channel and see if Tesla maintains this level for the time being. We'll see how Tesla goes from there. Moving forward on the QQQ, this is also looking kind of risky to me because just like SPY, I'm going to pull up the 4-hour time frame. We also happen to have a rising wedge on the triple Q. Now, does this mean it has to break down immediately? It does not necessarily mean that. It does not have to start crashing as soon as we open on like Friday. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that. But in order for this thing to start dropping, we need to see this thing essentially break below its trend line. We need to see a big rejection, and we need to see this thing lose this support right here, very close to 388. If we lose 388, then we're going to see a big move, a bigger move to the downside. So far, there's no sign of that, so we're going to be watching to see if that's the case. Right now, we're on an uptrend. So that is still possible for the QQQ to go higher, but there's the risk for the QQQ is just like SPY. We also happen to have some bearish looking signals, especially on the 4 hour time frame. We have a bearish divergence still developing on the 4 hour. Excuse me, sorry guys, on the 4 hour. Also on the 1 hour time frame, we happen to have a triple bearish divergence. I believe it's a triple. So we still have this bearish divergence that's developing. This is eventually going to retrace just a little bit. We might retrace eventually to like 380 and then bounce from there. But there might be a slight retracement coming looking at this imbalance in this unfilled gap. We're going to be watching to see when this happens. Could this be the liquidity grab up here and are we about to start sinking? I believe there's going to be a pullback eventually. We could pop a little bit higher first and then pull back later, but we'll just have to wait and see. For Nvidia, it's looking a bit more bearish. We were talking about this bearish divergence on Nvidia that ended up playing out. You can see Nvidia sinking. Make sure you watch that hourly 200 EMA acting as support. That's going to be at 482. If Nvidia loses that, we can start sinking even lower and get very close to 470. But as of right now, Nvidia is holding up. We saw some buyers defending it, so it may not sink super low, but make sure you watch supports just to be safe. Now, another thing that could be argued is that when you look at, I'm going to switch over to the hourly because I think the hourly looks a lot cleaner. But on the hourly time frame, Nvidia basically has this falling wedge that's developing, which is once again a good sign for the bulls for December. So if it does downtrend a little bit longer, right, just for another week or so, it could get a breakout and start breaking out as we approach December. So even though it's on a downtrend, make sure you watch this falling wedge just to be safe. Nvidia may drop a bit more, but there could be a nice move to the upside in December still coming. All right. Being said, we have Aapl being the last one to be talking about. I'm going to end the video once again from here because it's a weekend. I just don't want to make this video too long. As far as Aapl goes, you could see that we got this back test right over here of this like previous support becoming resistance. Then we got this rejection. Now Apple's like coming back down. So what I would say is that it's very important to be looking at Aapl from a different perspective. If you look at the hourly, it's starting to turn just a little bit, and we're going to be watching that 190.76 area as key support. Now, when we look at Aapl, you will notice that we happen to have a quadruple bearish divergence that is developing on the 1 hour time frame. This means that it goes up, but the RSI and these other indicators are still getting weaker and still suggesting that this thing may turn once again for a very healthy sized pullback. Now, there's no sign of this thing pulling back, so don't assume it's going to play out automatically. You want to be watching it. But I just want to call out that Aapl has not only this imbalance, which is getting very close to this like 194 area, but the daily candle is not looking that great. We basically got a nice push to the upside and came back down. This could be a reversal signal. So we want to be very careful to see if we get confirmation. We need to see this thing break and close below 190. If we get a close below 190, I could see myself turning a bit more bearish. As of right now, there's no sign of that happening. So I can't truly turn super bearish just yet. So the best thing to do is just be as patient as possible. And with that being said, I just want to thank every single one of you so much for listening. All right. So I'm going to be back just for a quick video tomorrow, and then I'll be back to normal on Friday. I was unavailable today because of some family matters I had to deal with, but I'm still here right now, and I'll be back tomorrow and beyond from there. All right. So thank you for listening. Have a great day. Make sure you watch your levels very carefully. And don't forget the market's going to be closed for tomorrow. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day and peace out.